Hello, I'm Kristen Reeves here with 24 seconds of climate reality. Did you know more countries around the world are on the path to ensuring we have a cleaner, more sustainable planet? From Argentina to Thailand, South Africa to Indonesia, dozens of nations are taking action and are meeting emissions and renewables targets. And that's 24 seconds that can change the world.
What can change in a day? A solar array can power a community. A business can embrace clean technology. A nation can vote to reduce carbon pollution. Around the world, every day, people are taking action to fight climate change, enacting real solutions, and already seeing the benefits. Join us as we travel on a journey of progress around the world, exploring the path toward a better, cleaner future for all of us, and how you can help create it. What can change in a day? Our future. This is 24 Hours of Reality. 24 Reasons for Hope.
Hello, my name is Sarah Backhouse, CEO of Future360.tv, an online network that raises awareness about sustainable innovation. And this is hour 19 of the 24 Hours of Reality, 24 Reasons for Hope. I'm so glad to be helping out the Climate Reality Project, an organization committed to sustainability and a cleaner world, and by being given a chance to share some of the major developments that are out there. At times, there's so much despair over the state of climate. It's exciting and reassuring to know that solutions exist, and there is real reason for hope. Great things are happening because leaders and governments are finally taking action, and many nations are on the right path to meeting emissions and renewable targets. But none of this would be happening without the work of the chairman of the Climate Reality Project, a man whose global activism and interaction with world leaders has done so much to fight climate change. Please welcome Al Gore.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you for joining us once again at 24 Hours of Reality. And thank you all for joining us for hour 19. And we're going to start right away with a 19th reason for hope. Sometimes we get the impression that governments are not doing much, and some of them really aren't. But in response to demands from the public, there are quite a few countries that are well on their way to achieving ambitious emissions reductions goals, and that is a source of hope. There is so much more to do, but there are still many governments around the world who have yet to enact national carbon policies, and that is a true failure of leadership. That's undeniable. But momentum for climate change is growing, and it is a source of hope that a great many countries are beginning to do the right thing and are making genuine progress toward meeting their emissions reductions goals. And that is a source of hope, that many countries are indeed making such progress. Let's take a look at what the European Union is doing. The European Union has been a stalwart for the world in continuing to make bold commitments and, by and large, in meeting those commitments. The EU emissions trading system got off to kind of a rough start, and in the early period of their emissions trading system, they were justly criticized. They got some things wrong, but they made the adjustments and they kept going, and they've been really determined to do better. They now regulate more than 11,000 power stations and industrial plants in 31 countries, along with airlines. And Europe has pledged by 2030 to cut its emissions by 40% and to produce 27% of its energy from renewable sources. I believe they're going to exceed that second goal and maybe exceed the first goal, because of all the other reasons for hope that we have already talked about in this segment, this year's 24 Hours of Reality. Greenhouse gas emissions in the EU are already down over 19% since 1990. That is genuine progress. That is a source of hope. Imagine what the situation would be like if we did not have positive examples like the EU. But it is not the only one. In Scotland, much in the news of late, an important referendum coming up, but look at Scotland's plans for climate. They have plans to produce 100% of all their power from renewable sources. That is another source of hope. In fact, if you look around the world at what happened last year, in the year 2013, 8 new carbon markets were launched last year alone. Another source of hope. There are some positive things happening, and that also means there are good, positive examples that other countries yet to act can build upon. They can learn from what's happened. They can use the success of these regions and countries that have made progress. So let's take a global view. What countries do already have carbon policies? Well, there are quite a few, but the one question mark that is most important is my country, the United States. But even in the United States, as we talked about in an earlier hour, President Obama has gone around the Congress by using legitimate legal authority that was given to the president in a previous Congress to regulate air pollution, and by defining global warming pollution as air pollution, and it clearly is. The U.S. Supreme Court has ruled on that matter, and the authorities used by President Obama are perfectly legal and constitutional. And using those authorities, he has instructed the Environmental Protection Agency to mandate significant emissions in global warming pollution from coal-fired power plants. But the reason for this question mark is that it's not enough, and most people are realizing that. And President Obama did try to get a national carbon policy at the beginning of his first term, but he was stymied by the United States Senate, even though the U.S. House of Representatives did enact it. So there is work to be done in the United States. I'm very optimistic and hopeful because President Obama is determined to get progress here. He's done some things I've disagreed with, but overall it's very clear that he is moving in the right direction on climate policy. And with public opinion changing, as we saw in a previous hour, there is now reason for hope that a national policy may be possible soon in the United States. The single largest source of global warming pollution in the world, of course, is China. But there is good news along with the bad news. China has now implemented a pilot carbon trading program in 5 cities and 2 regions, and significantly, China has announced that these pilot programs will serve as the basis for a nationwide cap and trade program as early as next year. It's even possible that the world might hear some new pledges from China next Tuesday at Secretary General Ban Ki-moon's special session of the United Nations to focus on climate. I certainly hope so. But these are not the only initiatives in China. As seen in an earlier hour, China has made the largest investments of any nation in renewable energy, fast trains, smart grids, renewable energy storage systems. And they have also announced a ban on new coal-fired power plants in Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou. Now, there is now a specific ban that will be put into effect on the burning of any coal use in Beijing. And it's important to understand that one of the reasons for this Chinese action has to do with the air pollution that is causing such problems in China, also causing the beginnings of some political turmoil and unrest. Here is the Beijing skyline on a clear day. Notice the outline of this building, and then look at the same building on a day where the air pollution is particularly bad. Similarly, here's another picture of Beijing a year ago, January, and 2 weeks later, when the air pollution reached an unacceptable level. Here is the Forbidden City, and look at what the air pollution from the burning of coal does to this vista. This is a view from a hotel room looking down on some of the modern structures in Beijing on February 4th, 2012. And then a year later, look at the impact of the coal burning pollution on that view. Now, of course, as we also saw in an earlier hour, this causes health problems and creates a tremendous opportunity to solve those health problems while reducing the global warming pollution that leads to the climate crisis. It's not only in Beijing. Other cities in China, Harbin in the northeast has some of the worst air pollution. Nanjing, where it's now routine for people in many China cities to wear these masks to protect themselves against the air pollution. And partly as a result, another new carbon policy initiative that China has announced this year is the requirement for thousands of companies all across China to report their greenhouse gas emissions so that the government can begin to collect the data that is necessary for this nationwide cap and trade program that they have told the world they are planning to implement. China's new president, Xi Jinping, has made many statements committing himself to leadership on this issue. This is only one where he says green and sustainable development represents the trend of our times. Interestingly, his first state visit as president was to the Maldives, a country famously known for being threatened by sea level rise because it's one of those low-lying island nations that is in danger of being overwhelmed by the sea level rise that accompanies the melting of West Antarctica and Greenland and the mountain glaciers. But regional governments and subnational governments have also joined 39 national government jurisdictions in all that have already implemented or are firmly scheduled to implement carbon pricing instruments. Again, imagine if we lived in a world where no nations were undertaking these kinds of initiatives. The fact that many have made these pledges and that many of them are meeting their goals is a source of hope, and we have seen genuine progress. Now, this is an interesting development. The E7 group, this is the emerging economies, have now reduced their emissions intensity for the first time by more than the reductions from the wealthy developed countries. Neither group has done very much, and much more progress is needed, but this is an historic change because the cartoon version of this crisis has separated developed rich countries from poor developing countries, and the image has been the developing countries are not doing anything, only the rich countries are. That picture is out of date. For the first time last year, the emerging economies made more progress than the developed economies. Now let's take a closer look at the United States. This is an extremely hopeful sign, even though there is not a national carbon policy in place. We are seeing an historic development. In the first half of this year, the majority of new energy generation came from renewables, the bulk of it from solar power, and close behind, wind power. No coal in the picture. When you look for new energy generation from coal, there is none. Natural gas prices have been going back up. Solar and wind are growing dramatically. So this is a real source of hope in the United States. 56% of new energy generation coming from renewables. A few years ago, if somebody had told you that would happen, you'd have to say, I don't believe it, it can't. but it is happening, and it is a powerful reason for hope. So when we look all around the world, yes, much more needs to be done, and we need a global agreement to be reached in Paris in December of 2015. But the very fact that so many nations are actually making genuine progress, and so many regional and subnational jurisdictions are doing the same, all of that adds up to a very powerful reason for hope, the 19th reason for hope.
It's great to hear such insightful analysis from Mr. Gore about the steps being taken to combat carbon emissions and adopt renewable technology around the world from someone who's helped make it happen. And you can be part of the global effort to ensure that we have a cleaner world by pledging to join the Climate Reality Project and tens of thousands of others in dedicating a day to make a difference. Get your friends involved, volunteer in your area, and raise awareness. The truth is, you are the key to transforming the energy economy and making our world a better place. It's time to stand up and stop climate change. It's time to make our future better. It won't be easy, the challenges are enormous, but together we can beat it. I know I'm dedicating a day to do my part. You may ask, what can change in a day? But with millions standing up together, we can transform the future. Go to 24hoursofreality.org to dedicate a day to climate action. The impacts of climate change have quickly become visible and devastating. More drought, more flooding, more severe storms are taking a toll on communities and economies around the world. As they do, it is more important than ever to understand that this challenge is not too great to address. In fact, solutions exist today. Let's take a look at the good news as a reminder that we can solve the climate crisis when we all act together.
Carbon dioxide has reached levels not seen in millions of years.
Climate change is here and getting worse.
Extreme weather has wrought havoc all over the world.
It's happening here and now.
We are running out of damage by the war.
So there's been a lot of news about climate change. A lot of bad news, that is. And for the good news?
Right.
Well, there hasn't really been any. Until recently. Today we're facing the hard truth of climate change with the stubborn relentlessness of human will. And good news is happening.
Right. And now for some good news.
Every day, new solutions are emerging. And not just wouldn't it be neat if solutions, real solutions. Our ability to convert sunshine into usable energy is rapidly becoming more advanced and accessible. Which is great because every hour the sun is sending enough raw energy to Earth to meet the entire world's energy demands for a full year. And the cost for clean energy technologies is dropping. Right now, the cost of solar energy is equal to or cheaper than fossil fuel energy in about 79 countries.
I didn't even know there were 79 countries.
And the electric car market is booming thanks to falling battery prices. And guess who likes that?
Who?
All types of people from around the world are starting to embrace renewable solutions. Schools are being powered by clean energy. Financial institutions are realizing dirty energy is a bad investment. And businesses are finding that going green is good for the bottom line. Which leads us to more good news. These solutions are actually working. It turns out that what is good for the environment is also good for the economy in many ways, like reducing poverty, spurring innovation, and creating jobs. In 2013, nearly 6.5 million people were employed globally by the renewable energy industry.
Job creation. Brilliant.
Right. And while other industries are shrinking, renewables are growing as new technologies and capabilities are being rapidly discovered.
And here's some more great news.
This groundswell of support for renewable energy is forcing leaders and governments to take action. The two biggest carbon emitters, China and the US, have made moves to curb their carbon pollution and invest in cleaner energy technologies. And they're not alone. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon is convening nations to forge a climate treaty that could unify the world to work together and lower our carbon emissions, transitioning us to a global clean energy society. We all know the bad news. Climate change is here. It's big, it's bad, and it's hurting us and our economies. But the important thing to know is that there is also good news. We have solutions here today, not dreams or wishes, real-world solutions that are ready to go and that are already saving money and improving lives.
Everyone's a winner.
If we rally around this good news and embrace solutions, we can forge the path to a clean energy future and make sure that progress is our new reality.
That's good news. Thank you for watching.
As we examine the nations that are on track to meet renewable targets, we travel now to South Africa for our next report from the field. The government here is supporting an ambitious mission to utilize free, clean, abundant wind to literally transform the energy landscape. Let's take a look.
Look at wind energy since 1998. In the last 16 years, the best way to describe it is it's a rocket launch after a very slow countdown. We counted down for more than a decade, but when it took off, it certainly took off.
Climate reality leader Johan van den Berg was a lawyer who became Africa's greatest wind energy champion. In 10 years, the country has become Africa's largest wind power producer, and he has helped craft this exciting development.
So the Darling Wind Farm was the first attempt to do this in South Africa. I became involved in about 2003 when there were various stumbling blocks, but ultimately those were overcome. The wind farm was opened up in 2008.
This country of 50 million people has created one of the fastest and most high-tech wind energy revolutions in the world. But these winds of change are now blowing up against one of humanity's oldest power sources, coal.
As we speak today, South Africa still generates probably 92% of its electricity from coal. We have a lot of coal, so there's a natural incentive to use it. But that doesn't mean that we have to.
South Africa has a coal addiction. The United States Energy Information Service says it's number 11 in the world for total carbon dioxide output from energy use. Vast open-cast coal mines like this one pollute communities and make global warming worse. Near Johannesburg, old 20th century coal-fired power stations like these release 461 million metric tons of climate-changing carbon dioxide every year. But now King Coal has a powerful, fast, and game-changing challenger.
Every kilowatt hour of wind power generated will offset the emissions of 1 kilowatt hour of coal that would have been there had the wind not generated.
So every bit of wind energy counts in lowering carbon emissions. Because of new advances in technology shared from places like Germany, van den Berg says that the cost of developing new coal power in South Africa is now double the cost of wind.
At the moment, you have the situation where new coal power costs very nearly twice what new wind power will cost you. The South African government at Copenhagen committed that 42% of our new electricity would come from renewable sources in the time leading up to 2030. And that equated to about 20,000 megawatts of wind and solar power installed by 2030, and we're firmly on track to reach that. My own belief is that we will easily exceed that.
In 2010, the government said they would need outside funding to meet these goals. But the cost of wind power is so competitive now that the economics are driving even the coal mines to get into the wind business. Exxaro, the second largest coal producer in the country, has just invested $300 million to create one of the biggest wind farms here. When energy companies look beyond coal for new investment, it's a sign that the technology is not just good for the climate, but good for the bottom line, explains climate reality leader Evan Rice.
And that really is the true success story here, is what we're seeing is not only is this a technology that's producing much cleaner power, but it's doing so at lower cost than traditional fossil fuel technologies.
At the government's South Africa National Energy Development Institute, Andrew Otto and his team published the first wind atlas, helping the government to understand the power of the wind resource for them to be able to drive investment towards it.
So the first thing, to develop a wind industry, you need to know how much wind, and you need to have at least some standard verification wind. And that is one of the big issues we struggle for some time. And that's why we developed the Wind Atlas.
Once the government developed the Wind Atlas and opened it up for everyone to see, it was clear that South Africa has excellent wind resources. And since then, investors have come knocking.
We're seeing these global leading companies starting to set up shop and manufacture components locally. And that's been designed in by the government's program by demanding increasing local content.
JAMA is the community trust developer for the Cookhouse Wind Farm. It's the biggest of its kind in Africa, with 66 turbines producing enough energy to power 140,000 South African homes.
We created about 375 jobs during construction for the local people. I'm not talking about the guys that came, with the contractors and the subcontractors. 375 just for the locals.
For a country struggling with 25% unemployment, jobs here are vital. But it is not only direct jobs like maintaining the wind turbines that will benefit this town. The community also owns part of the wind farm through an elected trust.
We should be seeing an improvement in those communities within the next, say, 5 to 10 years. We should be seeing a different community than it was before. And that is the main aim of the project. We want you, in 10 years' time, to look back and say, wow, thank you to the Cookhouse Wind Farm.
The South African government's investment process requires that investors here uplift the local communities where they operate by sharing a proportion of the profits that they generate from the electricity.
Up to 40% of the equity shareholding is held by a community or a community trust.
The Cookhouse Wind Farm supports projects like this old age home and development center. Here, the older women of the town have a safe place to cook, sew, and garden. In nearby Somerset East, life has been hard for many unemployed people. The government's Marie Coetzee foster care home helps give abandoned and orphaned children a normal life here. Leandra Gardner explains how the added money from the wind farm has made a huge difference.
The money that the wind farm donated to the Marie Coetzee foster cluster home, it brought many changes into those children's lives.
She says that the other major windfall of the project is that it stops children from ending up in her care because it's bringing jobs to the local community.
They create jobs for our youth in the communities.
Even security concerns are being addressed by renewables.
And some of the examples that you can already see about this community upliftment is already installed solar street lights for the community where they're going to build the wind farm because there was a security issue and they thought it would change people's lives by doing that.
Job creation is vital to South Africa. Evan Rice is the CEO of the government's Green Cape project and a big fan of wind power.
I think the most exciting part of building this renewable industry in the country is that it's going to create a whole lot of jobs, a whole lot of clean jobs, and creates opportunities for companies that are currently operating in one market to switch to being much more sustainable.
Green Cape is training and developing the next generation of green energy engineers here in Cape Town through technology transfer from countries like Germany. 3 years ago, the city of Cape Town and the national government partnered with Germany to create the South African Renewable Energy Technology Center. This cutting-edge technology center will produce qualified technicians to run and maintain the complex wind turbines.
Someone who is trained in South Africa would be able to work worldwide and would meet the standards of the worldwide needs and requirements of the renewable energies, particularly the wind turbine technology, which is a very complicated technology and requires a high set of skills.
His colleague, also from Germany, has already built successful training centers in both Germany and China.
I feel this is a part of that what we can do for this world, to make it more greener and show the South Africans you don't need so much coal. We have also renewable energy, and I think the wind energy is part of this. It's a big part of this.
Employment is one of the most critical things facing South Africa at the moment. We've got very high rates of unemployment, and we're seeing that renewable energy and other opportunities in the green economy are creating new opportunities for our people.
The center will train thousands of engineers like these to service the renewable energy market. This is a groundbreaking new factory to produce 120 wind towers per year, built by South Africans to service the growing demand for high-tech wind energy systems in the country.
We are bringing in a massive project which will create jobs. We want to contribute to climate change reduction.
It's also a testament to the government's long-term commitment to fight climate change and develop along a greener path.
Which will add value to whole issue of the green economy, will bring changes to whole issue of the climate change.
Vandenberg is optimistic.
So I think we're at a historical watershed. I'm not sure if it's 5 years or 10 years, but it'll change. I think the biggest satisfaction when one gets to one of these wind farms is to realize that even though there can be a slow beginning and things can take a while to gather pace, finally it does happen. And when it happens far quicker than you actually thought it would. It makes me feel tremendously thankful and joyous.
We've been focusing this hour on nations that are leading the charge in embracing renewable energy. In this next report from the field, we'll look at yet another sort of community taking the lead in climate action and adopting clean energy, our faith communities.
Before we begin, it is important to ask and answer this question. Why are we talking about the sun and solar panels in a worship service? What's faith got to do with it?
Well, when we have faith, we have hope. So that's the wonderful thing about working in the faith community. We know there's a power larger than the sum of our parts that is acting through us, and that gives us hope and inspiration for the future.
How I live every moment of my day actually makes a difference. It matters. We're just starting to realize that we're part of this earth. We can't not be part of it.
So as religious communities, knowing that we can have a hand in healing this environment and this Mother Earth is empowering, it's exciting, and it rallies a community.
So it's so good to have you young people here with us this morning to celebrate something very exciting, a new source of energy for your church.
Minnesota is a state full of people who really value the environment. Organizations and groups from different cultures who are asking that question, how can we create a world that is more just and sustainable? And seeking to work together to make that happen.
What's exciting about an interfaith movement is that, each organization, each faith tradition looks at their moral calling in a little bit of a different way, and in order to create a really vibrant interfaith movement, we need to hear a lot of different stories.
Sustainability overall is a very Jewish idea. We are clearly not owning the land. We are stewards of the land. That is in Genesis. It is in every book of the Torah.
St. Luke has a vision statement. One of the core values in that statement is this: we are connected. The world is our home, and anything that happens to any part of creation happens to us all.
What do churches do? They're supposed to inspire us to action, help us find our calling, find deeper meaning in the world. That's what it's for.
We're working with faith communities who want to find some practical solutions, whether it is becoming more energy conservative or getting alternative energy in your own building or growing gardens together. Figure out how exactly to link those practical solutions together to have a larger impact.
Every year, we put out a challenge for congregations to let us know what they're doing to save energy, to utilize renewable energy, to inspire their communities to be involved in these solutions that are at hand.
I got a text from a mosque saying, I heard you're doing zero waste. Can you help us do it? And I said, we are going to do this with you, absolutely. So it allows interfaith work to happen with us combining our efforts and coming together to make this world better.
I mean, it makes no difference if they're Jewish or Buddhist or agnostic or whatever. I mean, they have the same faith.
We are putting solar panels on our roof. We are constructing rain gardens. We've got a vegetable garden where there used to be grass, and we give that food to the local food bank.
It's based on permaculture principles, which is a way of growing things that emulates nature.
Very, very simple things like what plants benefit other plants, what plants bring in bees. Everybody's interested in that.
We are working with congregations to help them install renewable energy in their facilities, save energy, calculate their carbon footprints, and also to teach and preach about this issue.
All churches that come together, if you ask them, one of their top priorities would be caring for our children.
So at MNIPL, we're bringing together youth from different faith communities and supporting them in developing leadership skills and finding their voice to turn and lead in their own faith community so that those faith communities become even more activated, and then the youth are supported to grow and to flourish in their own lives.
People are not only in it for climate change, but for the fact that the community itself is so based on nurturing future generations. It seems such an abnormal sight. 8-year-olds and 18-year-olds and 40-year-olds and 80-year-olds all interacting in such a way, each wanting to hear what the other has to say.
IPL has got a dear place in my heart. I think they are doing great work with faith congregations.
An amazing opportunity to teach, to make sure our kids understand that their job is sustainability.
Beyond that, we have congregations very active in policy advocacy.
We created legislation that basically says we encourage all United Methodist congregations in Minnesota to reduce their carbon footprint 10% by 2016. No one spoke against it. So it was a lovely moment, actually, to listen to old men, young women, everything in between, stand up and say we should do this.
I think one of the reasons we were most excited about what's happened here today with the energy audit, we know that we can make some change right here locally, but that's not enough to solve the problem. But if we, our small little church, can be an example for other United Methodist churches that are kind of thinking, how does this thing work? What does it look like? Is it scary? I don't know. And because of our partnership with Interfaith Power and Light, both locally here with the Minnesota chapter and the national as well, that provides additional opportunities to share, to go beyond our denomination, to go beyond our state. So that's what really makes me excited about this.
People are so positive about the little things that they can do or are already doing and understanding how it fits with the bigger picture, that churches are so fun to work with because they've already kind of set the seed in place to be ready for us to come and talk about energy efficiency. Utility demand reduction is the words we use on our side, and set them on a path of using less energy.
So it really gets down to the practical level of actually finding out what you can do in your building and then implementing it. It's not rocket science, and it's not really exotic, but it's real practical solutions.
And that stuff is cumulative. It's really coming together that they are all different pieces of the same sphere that just depends on how you come to look at it, whether it's from an energy perspective or a stewardship perspective or an environmental perspective. It all fits together perfectly.
We just certified our first 20 cool congregations this year, and on average, they are reducing their carbon emissions by 42%. So this is far beyond the goal that has been set by the President in the Climate Action Plan. So we think we're really leading and showing the way.
Recently, during the annual conference of the Minnesota United Methodist Church, we were searching for an image or a metaphor for what it is to be fearless in the face of whatever challenge, particularly environmental challenge. And what we finally found was the image of a dandelion, because here we have this flower that everybody tries to kill. It won't die. You know, you chop it off, you poison it, it will be back. And you have this golden flower, and there's nothing grand about it at all. It's not a rose, it's not an exotic bird of paradise, it's a dandelion. They grow everywhere. They don't belong to anybody, so they belong to everybody. But you blow on that seed pod and the seeds are going everywhere.
So we ask people to think about practical changes that they can make in their lives and in their community. We ask them to think about how what they're doing is part of a bigger movement, so movement building or systemic change. And we ask them to think about how are they deepening their spiritual connection to the earth? What does this mean to them personally and to them in their relationships? So if all activities can have an element of each of those, it's a really exciting way to move forward.
It's so thrilling to know that interfaith doesn't always have to be about our differences or even about teaching each other about our traditions, but to work together to make this world better. That's bringing interfaith relations to a new level, and that's exciting.
And so as people of faith who care about our brothers and sisters, we are morally called and obligated then to engage in the climate crisis.
Pastors are preaching on it, choirs are singing about it. So there's this life that's just saying, it's right there under the soil getting ready to break through. And a dandelion will come through a sidewalk if it has to. And so will we.
We have congregations calling us every day, coming online, entering the Cool Congregations Challenge, asking for information. So that gives us hope on a daily basis that this movement is building. And I believe there is a change in consciousness right now happening in this country. We're on the beginning of a wave. We see solar panels, as we see here in this congregation, popping up beside steeples all over the country. And that's sending a message that this is a moral issue, this is a values issue. Caring for the creation is something that all people can care about as an important issue to conserve the environment and to care for future generations and the future of their children.
Throughout 24 Hours of Reality, we've been checking in with our green man on the street, Ian Somerhalder, who's been out on the streets of New York talking climate reality. Let's go back to Ian.
Hey everyone, it's Ian Somerhalder, your green man on the street. I am in New York City where the United Nations is about to go into General Assembly, where this year there will be a massive focus on the issue of climate change. So I am here to take a bite out of the green apple, to generally assemble, and to talk to people about a subject that always renews me, hope. Other than Kermit the Frog, who do you know is going green?
You.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, I definitely am.
Yes, that's what I know.
So when you buy something, right?
Okay.
You buy a product. Do you think about the company it's coming from, or what kind of business practices they utilize, or?
I wish I thought about it
Be
more,
honest.
but I don't.
No?
No, not as much as I feel like I should.
Okay, so can I run a couple things by you?
Please do.
So think about this. Maybe there's 4 parts of a product, right?
Mhm.
There's sourcing of the materials, raw materials, whatever. Then there's manufacturing, packaging, and distribution. If you have a company that's doing all that in a much more sustainable way, imagine the environmental impact that has. So ultimately, as a consumer, you have the ability to vote with your dollar every day, right?
Mhm.
And now you can tell people that, right?
Right.
So imagine, that's just you and me talking.
Mhm.
There's 308 million people in this country.
Mhm.
Imagine every one of us doing that.
That would be awesome.
That would
That's a
be,
great
right?
idea.
And
I'm
you
going to
can tell
start
people
doing
this
it.
stuff.
Yeah.
Knuckles. Question, so where are you guys from?
From Leeds in England.
Yeah,
of
both
you?
from there, yeah.
Very cool. So living in the UK, how important is the environmental effort for you?
It's very important.
Because it's changing.
Yeah. Anything we can do to make the environment better for future generations is a good thing. It's a positive thing.
And in practice, what do you mean specifically?
In practice, like we said, using public transport, reusing what you can instead of throwing things away, recycling.
You guys have a pretty good recycle program there, right?
Yeah, we do,
You have
yeah.
your compost and all that stuff. That you,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
all separate?
Yeah, everything's separate, yeah.
I wish America did that. What about you?
Yeah, definitely we try to do as much as we can, and I do think it's important that people are aware of these issues, because I don't think people always are aware of what's going on, so they're making decisions just naively, really.
Right.
And if they're more aware of what's happening, then they'll probably make a different decision.
By the way, let's just be honest, there's nothing wrong with people not truly understanding right now what's going on.
Yeah.
We live in this world where, I mean, you guys live in the UK, you know, everything is so expensive. We want so many things. All we do is work to buy a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
So basically, as a consumer, you can vote with your dollar every day.
Yeah.
You can choose to buy the products from a company that sourced their stuff from a sustainable way, manufactured in a sustainable way, packaged it in a sustainable way, and then distributed it in a sustainable way. We have that ability to do that. And thank you.
Okay.
Cannot thank you enough for your time and energy and effort. Thank you. Truly, it was just a kiss on the hand.
No, that's all right.
Sorry, man. What about other young people? What can you do to get other young people on board?
Well, since we're older, we have a really big influence, so just like talking to them about it and putting it in our school programs and stuff, just to make sure that they're aware of what's coming, because it will come at a certain point.
But let me ask you a question. Do you think that there's two parts of awareness? Isn't the other part of awareness active, like in action? Taking
like
action?
showing them what we can do, like recycling if they throw it on the ground, make sure like the green bin, because it could like the effects of what could happen.
Energy use, cars.
Yeah, making sure we close the lights.
Panels. You understand that as a consumer, with your dollar, whether it's Canadian or American, you have a choice and you make a vote every single time you spend a dollar with a company. Can you show that and tell your buddies that?
Yeah.
So that they know, like, wait, hold on. I'm cool as a cucumber, man. I have a lot of power.
Of course.
Yeah, you're awesome, man. Give me a high five. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Every movement has its moment. This is ours. So I'm dedicating a day to do my part. I'm dedicating a day to make a difference. It's time to stand up and stop climate change and turn the solutions that we have into the clean energy future that we want. So come join me. Go to 24hoursofreality.org and help me spread the word by hashtagging the word climate hope.
It's time for a reality check from our millennial documentary filmmaker, Vanessa Black, and this installment of Youth Fuel, our series on some of the top carbon polluters and climate change deniers in the United States. In this episode, Vanessa travels to Juliet, Georgia to visit the Sharer Power Plant. That's the largest carbon pollution emitter in the United States. Vanessa digs into the coal industry claims about something it likes to call clean coal to see what the term really means and whether coal plants today are actually able to capture the carbon pollution being spewed into the atmosphere. And what about the customers who want to make a difference and embrace clean renewable energy that exists now? Well, it turns out not everyone in Georgia is able to go as green as they might like, despite the great advances in technology. Let's take a look.
Here we are in Juliet, Georgia, home of the coal-fired Sharer Power Plant. It's the #1 power polluter in the country, burning 11 million tons of coal per year.
You're looking at 50% of our electricity. Coal. Learn more about America's power.
Does clean coal exist? If so, then how is it that this coal-fired power plant is still the top polluter in the country? In this episode of Youth Fuel, we travel to Juliet, Georgia to investigate Sharer Power Plant and Georgia's power monopoly. Sharer produces the most carbon pollution in America, but how are they being held accountable for the environmental and health impacts both locally and worldwide? From greenhouse gas emissions to hazardous waste, we are going to uncover the reality of America's nastiest neighbor and discover how their carbon pollutes the planet. I'm Vanessa Black. I'm a filmmaker and an activist. I'm traveling around America to find out more about our biggest polluters and climate change deniers.
Do you know how your electricity is generated?
Georgia Power, no? The company? Yeah.
Do you know what generates it?
No.
No, I don't either. What
So-
if I told you it comes from burning coal? Would you be surprised?
Yeah, that sounds pretty old-fashioned.
In 2012, Sharer emitted 21.8 million metric tons of carbon dioxide. The average coal-burning power plant only emits 3.5 million.
Energy efficiency only makes sense. Why are you going to pay for more energy if you can find more efficient ways to do it and stop using coal?
The nearly $100 billion spent on clean coal technologies have resulted in real environmental progress.
Clean coal is an idea that greenhouse gases can be captured and stored underground. This technology claims to be environmentally progressive, but the fact of the matter is it will still produce highly toxic materials as a byproduct of its chemistry. So how can this concept be good for the planet? Companies are investing billions to experiment with this technology. However, as of today, there hasn't been a single kilowatt of energy generated by clean coal.
Things that harm society should actually pay their true costs. It's called Pigovian taxation, and we do it with cigarettes. We tax the hell out of cigarettes because of the harm that they do.
Coal seems cheap, oil seems cheap, but it's not really cheap, because there are all of these costs that go along with it that we end up paying for in other ways.
Whether it's the coal we use now or the clean coal of the future, no matter how you look at it, coal is harmful.
If you had an alternative energy, would you want it?
Yeah.
Of course.
Hell yeah.
I would like solar. That would be my ultimate dream.
But the fact is, Georgia has no choice.
In Georgia, there was a law passed in 1973 called the Territorial Act, and it basically gives Georgia Power exclusive access to selling energy in the state of Georgia. So it essentially prohibits the expansion of solar energy here in this state because Georgia Power has the exclusive right to sell energy here in our state.
A free market is good for the consumer. It allows for competitive prices. At the end of the day, a carbon tax means more choice.
In order for Georgia Power to meet these emission standards, they're going to have to close down some of the worst polluting coal plants. Scherer obviously is among them.
Currently, the EPA recommends states consider a regional level carbon tax through their Clean Power Plan.
It basically comes down to we're going to have to change the whole paradigm of how we create and distribute energy in Georgia and in the United States. Right now, it's very centralized.
What are some of the other problems with our energy paradigm?
Lawsuits over contaminated water, soil, and air right here in Middle Georgia.
The lawyers filed 13 lawsuits on behalf of 23 Juliet residents, claiming this power plant and this quarry have contaminated the neighborhood.
Can you tell us about your husband and what happened?
He died 12 days after being diagnosed with leukemia. The man 2 doors over died right before my husband did. A friend of mine that lived up the road had breast cancer. The 3 little boys that lived next door had leukemia.
And do people think that it's related to the plant?
I think it is.
There's too many unexplained illnesses. There has to be an explanation of more than they just got sick.
So what does the community say about all these accidents that are happening and all these reports of illness?
We believe it's coming from the ash ponds. They aren't lined.
They found toxins like arsenic, lead, chromium, and uranium present in their air, water, soil, and bodies. They claim the chemicals come from coal ash at Plant Scherer.
By some accounts, the fly ash emitted by a power plant, a byproduct of burning coal for electricity, carries into the surrounding environment 100 times more radiation than a nuclear power plant producing the same amount of energy. This scary fact is one example of why we need stronger regulations.
What happened to your aunt? And she had breast cancer, right?
She had breast cancer that her doctor told her was environmentally caused.
So it's very clear that it's hazardous, and obviously something that's as hazardous as coal ash should be regulated. Unfortunately, when you really question a company like Georgia Power or these oil companies, they meet or exceed all state and federal regulations. And the thing is they're right, they do.
The standards that we hold each other accountable for as far as neighborly duties, they apply to large corporations as well, and we believe that they have forgotten that.
Given the power behind the coal industry, we need to keep their influence in check and challenge the status quo. We need to stand up for stronger regulations that protect the environment and us. Join the growing movement to solve the climate crisis and fuel a cleaner future.
It's wonderful to be back on 24 Hours of Reality on this beautiful morning. Clearly, the world is watching, and here's how I know. We're closing in on 12 million views and 150 million media impressions. That's 150 million, remarkable. Clearly, the hashtag Climate Hope is spreading, and we still have many more hours together. There's so much more to come here on 24 Hours of Reality, including another of former Vice President and Climate Reality Project founder Al Gore's reasons to have hope. Chris Hayes has a one-on-one with the World Bank's Dr. Jim Kim, plus conversations with actor Bradley Whitford, Reed Hundt, Counsellor to the President John Podesta, and Lieutenant General Russell Honoré. There's more from our green man on the street, Ian Somerhalder, more field reports you need to see, and music from Jack Johnson, Boyz II Men, and Fitz and the Tantrums. And you can see all the highlights of 24 Hours of Reality starting later today at 24hoursofreality.org. Climate change is real. It's happening right now before our very eyes. We still have a lot to lose and a lot to gain too if we act soon. Now, as the United Nations prepares to convene a special meeting of the world's leaders to collaborate on negotiating a new arrangement that can ensure a clean energy future, the Climate Reality Project launched a campaign to hear from the world's children in their own worlds. After all, they're the ones with the most to lose and the most to gain. So it's only natural that we'd have a few key questions for their leaders. As you might imagine, these young people have a way of cutting to the heart of the issue. Why not hear what they have to say? Plus, after this compilation of some of the best submissions from around the world, we'll see a single video that came in from a future climate leader from the Philippines.
My name's Amy Farrah and I live in England.
Hi, I'm Aiden and I'm from Hong Kong.
Hi, my name's Molly and I live in Malaysia.
Hi, I am Mika from South Africa.
I live in Croatia.
I live in Auckland, New Zealand. And I'm from Brazil.
Brazil.
From South Africa.
From France.
From the United States.
United States. From Mongolia.
From Malaysia.
From Dubai.
From Romania.
From Mexico City.
From the Philippines. From India.
From India.
Western Australia.
So my question for all world leaders is this.
And my question to the government bodies is...
My question to the UN is...
And I guess the first thing I want to say... The first question I want to ask...
My question is...
My question...
My question...
My question...
My question...
I'd like to question...
I would like to ask...
I'm asking members of the UN... Why do you sit here and pretend?
Why are we letting companies freely pollute the atmosphere?
Why are you allowing the palm oil industry to destroy Malaysian rainforests?
Why do global economic policies consistently stimulate and encourage reliance on burning fossil fuels?
Why is there no more emphasis on developing a generation who can take responsibility for the causes of climate change?
Why, in South Africa, a country overflowing with sunlight, don't we use solar panels?
Why not countries with similar consumption formulate region-specific laws and targets for the next decade?
Why not to put pressure on these companies to change their methods?
Why don't governments start creating sustainable modes of transport?
Para preservar o bem mais precioso que existe no planeta.
Why not change our focus, leave animosity and hatred and competition behind?
Why not incentivize people to use energy more efficiently?
Why not invest more resources in communities?
Why not strive to reduce carbon emissions?
Everyone has a stake in what happens to our planet.
The global problem requires a global solution.
It's time to act. So what are you waiting for?
Hi, I'm Jack and I'm from the Philippines. Today, the leading cause of global warming is the energy industry's gaseous emission from burning of fossil fuel. My country has available options for cleaner, renewable energy sources such as solar, wind, hydro, geothermal, and biomass fuel. According to the latest Philippine power statistics, approximately 28% of the energy that we generate come from these renewable energy sources. However, there still is a projected energy shortage for the years to come. Thus, our government decided that we will be importing energy alongside our heavy dependence on the local burning of fossil fuels. We already know the leading cause of the problem. Now, I would like to ask you leaders, why not focus and target on the increase of the efficiency and productivity of these renewable energy sources? We should promote researches that aim at developing cleaner energy technologies at lower costs.
And welcome back to the close of hour 19 here on 24 Hours of Reality, 24 Reasons of Hope. Do stay tuned, there's so much more coming up, including another message from our founder and chairman of the Climate Reality Project, Al Gore. There's an interview with John Podesta and so much more, so be sure to stick around. We'll see you back here very shortly.